Hi, Lara here, and I am back. I am today going to put together a layout that I've created for the Global Design Project, which you can find on Instagram, and this is challenge number 501. So recently, the Global Design Project celebrated their 500th challenge. And there's heaps of inspiration there from the design team where they scrap lifted each other. So head over to Instagram and have a look for that. Lots of inspiration. So I was invited to be a guest designer following the last colour challenge, and I was given these colours in advance, and they are just such a beautiful soft palette, sort of nice and sweet. So we've got Timid Tiger, which is not the one I'm using here. I'm using Petal Pink, although it looks kind of orangey with this technique that I'm using. And also Lost Lagoon will be the other colour as well. And you saw those ink pads at the start. So here's this really rich, zingy kind of Timid Tiger colour, and all I've done is sort of splosh the ink pad onto my glass mat and spritzed it with a little bit of water before either transferring the colour just sort of like by pressing down the cardstock, or by using the plastic bag that I used just before. And here's our stamp chamois, just showing the multi-purpose nature of that, in that it can, yes, you can wipe your stamps off in it, but also it's nice and flexible for wiping off your surfaces that you're working on. So when I looked at this photo that I'm documenting, which was my daughter's some graduation photos that we took down on the beach, and the photo that I've particularly chosen is my mother, myself, and my daughter. All three of us have degrees in different fields, and my journaling, I'll talk about that a little bit later on, just a special connection there. So here's the three of us, and because these photos were taken at the beach, I've chosen to use this Waves embossing folder. And right when I first saw this embossing folder, I wanted to add some stitching, and this seemed to be the perfect opportunity with that beachy kind of scene, and just adding some of the lines here with some of the white thread that you'll see up there that I've pulled it from. So I'm not going to do all of this stitching here, or you'll be watching for a long time, but here's kind of that finished and chopped piece using that embossing folder. And where that join is, I will cover it up with some other bits and pieces, and I decided that I just needed to soften the top and bottom. Being a beachy scene, it just sort of needed that, and with that mixed media inking in the background, it felt like it would cope really well with just sort of those rougher edges tucked in there. And loving this two-tone cardstock, it allows sort of that white core to show through when you're tearing it. And so this is kind of the basis of what I am looking at. I just love those touches of the ink sort of coming out from behind. And I have chosen to use some of the in colour design papers, and this is sort of that painterly effect that brings in that inking that I've done behind. And so these leaves here, I wasn't really sure what I was going to do beyond what I've already done on the layout there now, but when I was going through the DSPs, I saw the leaves and I thought actually they would be kind of cool in here. So I am going to layer them up in behind, so it's peeking out from behind that cardstock backing. Now I'm going to take some of the Petal Pink and I'm going to put it through this, I think it's Perfectly Plaid or Perfectly Plaid, depending how you pronounce that, embossing folder, just to add another layer of texture in behind, because at the moment I've sort of got the paint, I have got some paper layers, and I've got that other texture, the Waves embossed cardstock, and I'm going to put that in behind. Now another beauty of the two-tone cardstock is being able to sand it to let that white core peek through, and again just with that beachy sort of white waves, it just felt like it would really work with that. And you can see here the texture just popping out with that, and it is going to just be a bit of a frame around the photo rather than the whole piece, but some nice wee leftover pieces there that I can use for other things. So trimming that down a little bit, and at this point I think is when I decide that I'm going to sort of cover that top where it isn't torn on the waves that I've done the stitching on. Just using the scissors here to distress the edges a little bit further so that it's not all nice and neat. And just roughing up these edges again. That white core just sort of peeks through there as I go, and it doesn't matter if it gets a little bit torn because that's sort of what I'm working on with these. So that photo mat's coming together, the layers behind the photos, behind the photo. There's only one of them, there's just 3 of us in it. And at this point I'm not really sure what I'm going to call it, but I do end up calling it 3. So there's another little piece there that I found that I'd pre-done for something using, I think, a Demask type embossing folder. I'll link up the names of what I've used down below in case you're wanting to find those to get a hold of them. But yeah, so I decided I need to use a little bit more of the leaves that I'm fussy cutting from the In Colour Designer Series paper, and just cutting around those to create that sort of, I guess, a floral branch almost through the photo that goes up behind it and down underneath. So now I'm going to work on this title, and I am going to use the Party Alpha. It does seem to be my go-to for scrapbook layout titles at the moment, and I'm going to use some of the adhesive paper just because it makes them so much easier to stick on at the end. Now I'm going to make the lettering a bit thicker. I didn't want it just the pattern or the designer series paper, so I am going to back the paper and stick it onto some of the white cardstock before then putting it through the die cut machine. So these strips are really good, especially for fiddly lettering. It's probably not as necessary for the Party Alpha. It was just because I was doing the layers that I wanted to use it here, just to simplify the process when I get towards the end. So just peeling off that back of the designer series paper with the adhesive and sticking it onto the cardstock, and then I'm going to put another layer of the adhesive on the back of that cardstock. So just pulling that out in pieces and folding that down. And so now we're ready to pop on the Party Alpha, and I've done that, I've put that through. Now what's kind of cool with this is the way it works is the adhesives in the back, so these have effectively become stickers. So you'll see when I peel them off and take them out of the paper that I've used, that the back of the adhesive is there, so you don't have to peel that off, you just lift the letters out, which is kind of cool. So now I'm going to stick down each of these little leaves in behind, just using the tape runner there. Because they're a lighter paper, they will stick down quite nice and easily. And with this one I decide to use the tear and tape adhesive just because it's that little bit bulkier and heavier. I did wonder about using some Tombow, but I felt there was enough sort of water weight on the background already with the watercolour stamping that I did, so I didn't want to add to that. And finding the position again, which is why I stuck down those leaves to start with, because it would sort of give me that anchor point or that guidance or that place where I was going to put them down. So again, the embossed sort of folders or the embossed cardstocks, now I am going to use the tape with them to stick them down. So now I've got that, this is what will be at the top, so I'm going to sort of put the photo on there so a little bit peeks above and below. I could have trimmed these down and just poked in a little piece at a time, but I didn't. It was just a leftover piece, and it's nice to have it sort of used up in there. And choosing my spot to stick that. And again, the patterned paper will stick down quite nicely. And just wanting that sort of slightly on a bit of a lean, so positioning that. Now I'm using the dimensionals here because I want to be able to tuck those leaves in and under, and it just gives that little bit more room for movement and sort of lifts the photo from the background a wee bit. They do have a wee pile up of the backing pieces, and I will scoop them into my bin a little bit later. But they are a nice way sort of to add that little bit of extra dimension tucked in there. And adding the last few leaves that are tucked in there so that you can see how I wanted them to be able to fall in from behind the photo. And by shaking it, I was able to see that one wasn't quite stuck down yet. And here's these letters, and you can see that that backing kind of stays there, so they're quite like stickers. And I decide to start at the end, so working backwards with the title. And I sort of press it down, but then you'll see a little bit later on that I go in and I add some of the dimensionals above some of these, just because I have used the dimensionals behind the photo. So the top isn't quite sitting flush with the page at this point. And there we go, and this is at the point where I think actually I should have stuck down the dimensionals up there before I put them down. So just going to add those at a spot that suits. And you can see it just sort of adds that little bit of lift at the top. So just the tops of each of these letters are going to get that little bit of a pop. And putting them down. And there we have essentially most of it, except for the journaling, which I'm just popping in down here. So the journaling that I am writing is about the fact that the three of us have gained tertiary education and degrees and things as a result. And an interesting fact was that my mother and I were both studying at the same time. So Mum went back as an adult student, and she gained her midwifery degree. And at the same time I was studying nursing. I was just a year behind her. And so we even sat an exam at one point in the same room together, which was, just kind of a nice mother-daughter thing. And I then went back and studied teaching after I'd done my nursing degree, and my daughter has followed my teaching footsteps and has gained her first position this year up in the North Island of New Zealand. And so it was just kind of a nice special photo of the three of us celebrating her graduation. And I'm just adding a few more of these sort of clear sparkles on here, just adding a finishing touch, sort of I love adding these at the end. They just add a nice interest point and a nice finishing place for your eye to look at. So there we have a layout using Timid, Tiger, Petal, Pink and Lost Lagoon for the Global Design Project. Again, head over there, you can look at the fantastic inspiration from last week where the team was scrap lifting each other, and they will also be using this colour challenge over the next few days as well and sharing some of those. And there's even an opportunity for you to jump in and join in and share. Just make sure you use that hashtag so the team sees what you have created, and you never know, you might be the next guest designer. Hey, thanks for having a look, and I'll leave you with these sort of close-ups of the layout. Thank you.